Guys, so highly requested video. What are the best LG devices to still buy? So if you are still a diehard LG fan and you want to finish off, a year or 2 years with an LG device, then this list is for you. But before we get into that, I do want to just mention that the phones that are going to still be updated. So I want to go ahead and just read this article briefly for you guys. So LG announced a pledge to issue future Android OS updates to many of its smartphones, despite confirming earlier this week that it'll be leaving the smartphone business altogether. The Velvet, the Wing, G, and V series phones from 2019 or later should be getting 3 Android updates from their year of release, and certain 2020 models such as the LG Stylo and K series will be getting 2 updates. So that's very important to pay attention to for all of you guys that are concerned about software support. So for example, the LG Velvet came out last year with Android 10 and its Android 11 rollout is currently in progress. That means that it should be getting Android 12 and Android 13 at some point, assuming Google continues with, its yearly update cycle or whatever. So they are describing it as a 3-year pledge, like we all know. So we're going to be looking for that intently, of course, next year. Because you guys know I have most LG devices. I have a few I have to finish getting, but yeah, we'll be looking out for those software updates. We do have Android, 11 on my V60, so I think that'll be one of the first devices to get Android 12. But yeah, so let's go ahead and jump into this list. V60 comes in at $400 and it's a very solid phone at this price point. You have an aluminum frame, glass back on here as well. It's really built like a tank, really solid phone. A 6.8-inch POLED display. It's HDR10 Plus at 1080p, $395 for the PPI. Overall, it's a very nice panel, little water drop notch, beautiful colors on here. Gets fairly bright outdoors, so no issues there. Mine is currently on the Android 11 update, which is really nice. Running the Snapdragon 865 and the Adreno 650 on here. So basically this is extremely powerful phone, especially if you pair it up with the dual screen case. It's just a powerful gaming phone and a powerful multitasking phone, so that is something that you should really consider if you're a powered user. You also have micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 8 gigs of RAM. Now, in addition, this phone does have some amazing sounding stereo speakers, extremely loud, and also just excellent bass quality, good mids and highs. And in addition to that, you also have a 3.5mm headphone jack with the quad DAC as well, which is really awesome. This phone also has NFC on board, as well as a fingerprint scanner under the display, which works, fairly fast. I don't have, any issue with it. You also have pretty great cameras on the V60 as well. A triple camera setup, a 64 megapixel standard, 13 megapixel ultra wide, and a 0.3 depth sensor. You also have 8K video and a 10 megapixel selfie that shoots in 4K as well. So you're going to be getting some really good shots. Good, very good color, very good natural color, good dynamic range. Ultra wide is great. Overall video solid. So just a great camera phone as well. So you do have a 5,000 milliamp battery with wireless charging as well. This phone definitely is a battery beast. So just the phone by itself, if you're not on 5G, this thing will last you at least 2 days easy. So I was really impressed with battery life on the V60. Next is the LG Velvet. This again costs around $300 now. Also a very good phone. So this phone has one of my favorite designs. And it comes in some really pretty colors as well. But you do have the aluminum frame on here, IP68 dust and water resistant on here. And you also have a 6.8-inch POLED display. This is also a phone that is compatible with a dual screen case. It is a 1080p display, $395 for the PPI. Overall, pretty much identical to the V60 water drop notch. It has a slight curve to it as well, so that is something that you should take into consideration if you're anti-curve or whatever. You do have on here Android 11 with the Snapdragon 765 chip and the Adreno 620. Overall performance is still pretty good on the Velvet. Again, it's not going to give you that flagship power of the V60, but definitely is powerful enough, I think, for most people. You do have micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM, so all of the storage is covered pretty much on this device. You have stereo speakers which sound pretty good, and also a 3.5mm headphone jack is still on board. Unfortunately, there is no quad DAC, so for all the fans of that is not going to be on here. You also have NFC on board, as well as a fingerprint scanner under the display, which works perfectly fine, so no real issues there. The Velvet does have some pretty good cameras. Again, another triple camera setup, 48 megapixel standard, 8 megapixel ultra wide, and a 5 megapixel depth. You also have 4K video with a 16 megapixel selfie that shoots in 1080p. Overall, the Velvet's cameras again are going to be extremely solid. I think all the phones on this list have very good cameras for the price that you're paying, so I wouldn't necessarily worry about image quality here, but as you can see, they look great. So you do have a 4300 milliamp battery, 25 watt fast charging, and wireless charging as well. Overall battery life is pretty solid on the Velvet. I was able to get through a full days of battery life, and again, I'm not using 5G on any of these phones. I don't have it in my area, but yeah, so battery life is going to be solid here. So next is the LG G8X. Now you can actually pick this phone up for around 200 bucks. Just the phone itself, not the dual screen case. The dual screen case is going to cost you like an extra 100 bucks. But this is also a really good phone for if you want sort of like the V60 experience or Velvet experience with the dual screen case, but you want a more compact sort of phone, then I would look at the G8X, even though it's really not that small at 6.4, but it's not a massive 6.8 inches like those two phones. So that is something to think about as well. This phone has the premium design, aluminum frame, glass back, IP68. You have a 6.4 inch OLED display. It's HDR10, 1080p, 403 for the PPI. You can also consider the LG G8, the original one, that has a 2K display if you want, you know, if you're really heavy on display and watching videos. You also have the Android 10. This will get the update. And you also have Snapdragon 855, Adreno 640. I did a gaming test on here, runs perfectly fine. The Snapdragon 855 chips are still extremely fast. They play all the latest games, so I was really happy with that. You also have micro SD support and 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM on here. Now the G8X does have the quad DAC as well, so that is really great for audio listeners. And you also have stereo speakers, which sound really good on here as well. NFC is on board with the fingerprint scanner under the display. I think the cameras on here are pretty good. It's only a not a triple, but a dual camera setup, a 12 megapixel standard and a 13 megapixel ultra wide, 4K video, and a 32 megapixel selfie that shoots in 4K. As you can see from the shots, again, like I said, all these phones are very capable of taking great photos, very natural color science, very good detail. So again, very good cameras on the G8X. I have zero complaints, especially at this price point. You do have on here a 4000 milliamp battery with 21 watt fast charging and wireless charging. Overall, I was able to get through a day's battery life on the G8X. Now again, when you're using the dual screen case, you can definitely slice some screen on time. So, and that's what all of these phones that are compatible with it. So if you are planning on using a dual screen case, just know you're not going to get that amazing battery life like you are going to get without it. Next is the LG V50. Again, this is pretty much like the big version of the G8. So it's the same deal here. Aluminum frame, glass back, IP68. POLED display at 6.4 inches. The big difference here is that this one has the 1440p or 2K display with 538 for the PPI. So it's extremely sharp looking display. Colors and just everything looks really beautiful, vibrant on this display. So very, very sharp. That's one of the things I really love about this phone. Android 10 is on board with the Snapdragon 855, micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage, 6 gigs of RAM. You already know, very powerful, will be able to play games, do whatever you need it to do. You also have stereo speakers on here, which honestly aren't that great. It's not the bottom one, it's the top one. It's almost like it's really not even there. So that is one thing that I've always not really liked about the V50 speaker setup. You also have a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack with the quad DAC. Sounds amazing. Very good audio quality. 12 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel telephoto and a 16 megapixel ultra wide 4K video. And this phone actually has a dual camera setup up front. It's got a regular selfie camera at 8 megapixels, then a 5 megapixel ultra wide or wide lens. So if you take a lot of selfies, then you can bring more people into the shot, which is really nice. And as you can see, the same story here, good detail, natural colors. The telephoto lens is awesome for that 2x optical zoom. You get a good depth of field. Overall, V50's cameras are still pretty good. So you also have NFC, a physical fingerprint scanner on the back, as well as a 4000 milliamp battery, 18 watt charging with wireless charging. Again, this is a phone that is, again, very good with battery life. This one is not compatible with the dual screen case. There is a V50s if you want that. But they're kind of hard to get as far as being in the United States, but yeah, so V50 is still an awesome pickup. Last is the LG Wing. This is a phone that I've always read about. I haven't been able to get my hands on it yet because I've sort of lost bids on trying to get a really good deal. Like I'm really adamant about getting good deals on eBay. I'm like addicted. But yeah, so this phone is an awesome phone. If you want to go the more the more how would you say it, like if you want to be in a more niche kind of route here and have a sort of wacky design phone, it is a very interesting how the screen just turns and it pops, and I think it is it's an attractive phone, attractive concept for sure. It's got an aluminum frame, IP54 splash proof, so not IP68, do note that. You do have on here a, again, rotating POLED display, which looks very, very cool at 6.8 inches. It's 1080p. And you also have that secondary display. It's a GOLED display. It's also a 1080p at 3.9 inches. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do. It's sort of like it sort of takes a dual screen case concept and just sort of flips it and turns it into this design. So I think it's pretty interesting. I will get my hands on it if anybody is still interested. Again, Android 10, Snapdragon 765G, same processor as the Velvet, so you're going to get good performance but not flagship performance. You also have micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage, 8 gigs of RAM on here. No headphone jack on here, unfortunately, and no stereo speakers on here, unfortunately. You do have a fingerprint scanner under the display, and you also have a triple camera setup, a 64 megapixel standard, 13 megapixel ultra wide, 12 megapixel ultra wide, and then you have a 4K video, and then a motorized pop-up camera that's 32 megapixels as well here. So this phone also has a 4,000 milliamp battery with 13 watt wireless charging, and you do have fast charging on here. So overall, the Wing is a pretty interesting device here if you're sort of into the whole flip mechanism, if you think that would be pretty cool. So thanks for watching this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.